Welcome back to Learning Matters. I'm Doug Wooldridge, your host, and this week we have on David Wirtz, who is a learning consultant for Intel with over 30 years of experience in the world of learning and development, to discuss all things staff augmentation and how he went from freelancer to staff aug to now working full-time as an employee for Intel, and the differences between freelancing and focusing on staff augmentation. Let's get to the interview. Thank you so much for joining the podcast today, Dave. First things first, how did you even get into the world of adult learning?
Well, it's kind of a funny story. For a long time, I had my own business doing presentation graphics in the 80s and 90s. And then, this little program called PowerPoint comes out, and video projectors started dropping in cost, so nobody needed 35 millimeter slides. So I went to work for a long distance company, Sprint, and was smiling and dialing for long distance in the 90s. So those that are old enough to remember the 90s, you used to be able to get $100 for changing long distance companies. And so I did that for a year, working nights. And they put a job rec out for somebody who knew HTML. And that's how I got into training, was because I knew HTML. Totally.
And what year was this again?
This was 96.
96.
That was 1996.
So HTML is just
1996.
That's right. And HTML is just a baby at this point.
Right. Yeah.
How did you even figure out what to do with HTML? Were you going to college for that, or were you just tinkering around?
I was, just kind of putzing around and figured out how to, picked up a book or two and, found it on, there's enough of the internet you could go out and look at things and see, and, and I just kind of put it together. I remember going into the job interview and having a dot matrix of about 200 pages of, you remember the old dot matrix printers that, everything was still connected? I remember coming out with that. So, it was kind of fun to get into training that way. And then, it was really because I was doing working they were looking at how to chunk information, how to chunk e-learning. And at that point, there wasn't the programs like there are now, Storyline or Captivate or anything like that. You did it all in HTML and Shockwave type of thing. And so, we spent about a year studying how to chunk information. And basically, it's the same concept as what you use today is you go to the smallest piece of, content that works for you and what you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm. What is the difference in the amount of time that you have to spend chunking that data out back in the HTML days as opposed to Storyline, all that good stuff today?
Oh yeah, it was back then. It was I'm not a big fan of doing storyboards, but I know how important they are. So you have a constant look and feel. You not only do the storyboard, but once you kind of got the script written or the storyboard written, then you'd have to figure out, okay, what size header do I want? What size this? Because it would change all, you have to hand code all that in there. Unlike Storyline and Captivate now, where you can do a copy and paste of a slide and basically, okay, I changed the title from, this to that, and kind of like you do in word processing. So it really changes the way you do business now, is you can do things so much faster.
Yeah. And were you working as a freelancer at that point?
No, I was still working with Sprint.
Or were you working for...
I was working for Sprint and was there for a while. And actually my career took many turns, and within, like you do with most large corporations, is I ended up working for the network side for a little bit, which was how they would process the long distance phone calls. And then went into, at that point, it was called Sprint PCS, what we now know as T-Mobile, and worked with them. And in fact, my last project there before they laid off probably a third of the company in 2002 was working on an education piece that could be put into the individual PCS stores. So a customer could come in and just, hit a touch screen and basically learn about the different handsets and everything like that. So it was.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. So it was, I remember this was right after September 11th. And we're going out to do our first beta, and we bought this really nice Bose speaker at Best Buy, and I hadn't even opened the box. And we get to KCI Airport, and we're checking our luggage in, and they're asking what's in the box, and I'm kind of going like, I'm assuming it's a speaker because I haven't opened it. You got to remember, this is when the National Guard was walking around in the in the airports and everything like that. You talk about just a weird feeling. So, but it was really kind of a neat concept that we were able to put that out there and did some real testing with it, and we're getting some pretty positive. We tried it had a beta store in Beverly Hills, California, and then another one in just north, I think it was north of the Empire State Building. So we really had some great ways of testing this out, and then testing out the concept of how to deliver content remotely, because there wasn't, like what we have now, Netflix wasn't around in a streaming format or anything like that. You worked with content engines and all that kind of stuff and trying to figure out how to deploy all that.
What was the process that led you to jumping into the freelance world?
Well, I got that extended vacation program from Sprint, as I like to call it. And, it came right.
Very nice of them.
Yes, that was nice of them. And it came right before Christmas, which I thought was a nice touch. So, working with Debbie, she had just taken on or just, started up what was then known as technically training and helping her get started. And she needed somebody to do some content development. And so, I helped her get that going. And, I can remember sitting at the dining room table, thinking, where are we going to call this thing? It's, she had bought out Technically Writing. So, hey, Technically Training sounds like a good name. Hey, nobody had that on that, website on the internet. So, it's just how things come around, and, I'm sure she remembers it much different than I do. But, we did that and really freelance for about a little bit over a year. Working for I remember the customer was a large financial organization, and we worked for them for, a ton of work. I just remember one time we were coming up at the end of the project, and I was taking the family on our first cruise we'd ever taken, and Richard and Courtney were, they had to be still in grade school, I'd guess. Or Richie maybe in middle school or junior high at that point. And I remember trying to upload files via a 3G mobile phone.
Oh,
overnight.
No. Oh,
because
no.
Somehow some last minute changes had been made, and I don't remember the instance, but I remember we drove from Kansas City to Dallas, then down to Galveston, and got to Galveston, had, I don't know, like 5 changes, type of thing. But, those 5 changes took all night to upload. And so just the difference in how technology has made our lives so much easier is what I've seen in the training industry.
Let's talk about that a little bit. You've been in the training industry for a long time.
Yeah, since dinosaurs roamed.
What have you... Yes. And what have you seen that has been the biggest changes within the industry?
I think it's the ability to incorporate video and audio easier. It used to be that you would, you'd have to hire a camera crew to go out and shoot something, even if it was a conversation like this, you just, would be, you'd have several $1,000s worth of staff and gear and everything to shoot that. Now we can have a conversation just like this. I'm working on some training programs right now where we want to just say, hey, this is how you open a file, your in type of thing. And so instead of having the person go through an e-learning of doing a bunch of clicking, here, let's just show it to you in a video, and we record it in Teams.
Yep.
It's 30, 40 seconds worth of screen capture and audio with it, and boom, you're done with it. It'll take you longer to edit than it'll be worth it. So that's the cool thing. That's what I've seen with technology is that it has really increased our breadth of ways of doing business.
And I want to talk a little bit about the difference between freelancing and staff augmentation. And I want to tie a little of that into the technology that you have access to, proprietary stuff, non-proprietary things. Can you just tell us, to start with, just a little bit of the difference between working as a true freelancer and then as an actual staff augmentation?
Sure. That first year, I learned a lot from being a freelancer. It's you live from project to project.
Yep.
And, and some projects take 3 months. Some projects take 2 weeks, type of thing. It may be longer now, but you know what I'm talking about. And so, I like a little bit more stability with it.
Yeah.
That's what I liked about when I started really looking at where I want to go with my career. And after I was with the financial organization for a while, I decided that, staff augmentation, if I'm going to do it, is going to be the way to do it. Is normally you get a 6-month contract with those on a regular basis. And, I can remember the first one I got was with Capital One. Had the total interview was a phone interview. And the reason I got it was because I knew the system they were going to implement because of the organization I'd been with. So I knew how that worked. And so that ended up, they put me in for 6 months, and then it got rolled over. It was, and we did that for a little bit over 3 years. And my role changed as we went along. I went from true instructional design that they had a new back office system they needed a simulation for. And so I actually developed a simulation for them that was, nobody had any idea how the system worked because the people that were building it for them, that they were buying it from, had never put one all together. All they had was the business requirements document. So,
that's a good start.
That's at least a start. And a lot of trainings I've worked with since then, business requirement documents are loosely given out. Like, we may do this when we're all done, type of thing. And those in the training industry know what I'm talking about is, but I put it together and I put this simulation, is how to process checks in the back office for Capital One. And I came up on my 3 years, and they were to roll this over to another person to finish up. And so they brought him on early so that I could train him with what I was doing so he would be there for it. And it wasn't more than a couple weeks. They realized that they just couldn't turn it over because the simulation was so complex and everything. So they went to senior management to get my contract extended beyond the 3 years that was allowed by company policy. Which, hey, I'm all for that, In 3 months, I want to look for another job for a couple more months. And so the cool thing that came out of that whole thing is that they actually used the product, the simulation. I was on doing some work in the National Jamboree for Boy Scouts in 2013. And so I had about a 3-week period between when I finished, not so much finish the contract, but when I finished the work, and then I'd take that 3 weeks off and then come back and have about a week to finish up on any minor details that they felt they needed to change. I come back and they said, yeah, your simulation went over real well. I'm going, hey, I'm feeling good about this, Nothing broke, And they go, yeah,
Yes.
we just got $1 million increase in our software budget so we could do it based off of the simulation because I followed the business requirements document. I'm glad I did not know that going before I went to National Jamboree because I probably would have been a very nervous Nelly for 3 weeks.
I believe it. I believe it.
So,
and
that's what the cool thing about the way technology's gone is, we talk about training, but training can also be there for the enhancement of business decisions. In this case, there was a simulation that we're incorporated into the training. With that in mind, we were able to use that simulation to show senior management what was going to need to be done. And so that's what's a cool thing. That's what I'm seeing in technology is in training going down the road is it's a lot closer mix between business decisions and training.
Well, I think that's the wisest decision that corporations can make because a lot of training does come down to how is this going to benefit the business and the bottom line.
Right.
We had Robin Sargent on for the CEO and founder of Idle Courses, and one of the things she spoke to was that when you go in as an instructional designer, whether that's a staff aug type of thing or whether that's a freelance type of thing, your bottom line is the client's bottom line. So they're looking for solutions to make sure that they can find growth within their own company. And whether that's retention or whether that's compliance related things, doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, you're all working towards the same goal, is a better influx on profits and how can we make this company more efficient.
Exactly. And my whole career has been around that. It's, what can I do to help increase the bottom line? And when you come in as staff augmentation, you got a little bit more latitude with that because they know you got a little bit more time to build those relationships, and you don't come off quite as harsh sometimes as you do if you're a freelancer.
Sure.
I just can't come off that harsh. I'm all about relationships, and
well, you're jumping in directly into their team. So you have to be, you have to connect yourself with these folks. You have to figure out the culture of the entire organization and how to work with these folks because you're going to be working with them day in and day out. It's not a set it and forget it type of thing where they're just like, we need this custom learning piece. We're going to let your team do it. We're going to let your team build it. And then we'll have, responses from our subject matter experts. Once the deliverables start coming through, you are really a part of the team. And how do you develop those relationships? How do you go into multiple different corporate structures and just immerse yourself immediately within the culture as well as within the team?
Part of that starts before you even get there on day one. It's learn a little bit about the organization. Coming out of the finance organizations and supporting mostly finance companies as over the years I've been, whether it was Capital One or H&R Block, those type of things, I can make those. That's pretty easy because you talk the talk, because you've learned.
You already got the lingo down.
You've got the lingo down. At Intel, I had no idea what the lingo was. The funniest story is I'm doing the interviews, and I know you got questions for me, but I'm going to jump ahead a little bit because this is relevant.
Let's jump ahead. We have no structure here.
I applied for the job. It was out there just like any other job on Indeed or, Monster.com, whatever job board I found it on. And I applied for it, and, I'm going like, hey, I felt pretty good about it. I can make, I can do just about anything. And I'm interviewing them and interview with the project lead for the project that I was being hired for. And Jeff and I got along really great. He's one of our statisticians here at Intel. and he was just easy to talk to. If it was supposed to be a 30-minute conversation, I would bet we went a full hour, easy.
I believe it.
And really got to learn a little bit about them. See, so not only are they interviewing me, I'm interviewing them to see if I even want part of this show,
Yes.
And then the next interview was with a manager. Well, okay, you assume it's to the manager you're going to work for, right? Mm-hmm. No.
You think so?
Yeah, in fact, I didn't even know until after I got the offer letter that it wasn't the manager I was going to be working for. You
got to know a whole new name now. You got to get their life story.
Oh yeah, yeah. And so, but I had that same thing. It's I'm interviewing them for for the job, and Patty was great, and she's been in training not quite as long as the dinosaur hunter here, but we had great conversations and everything. And so I get the offer letter and I'm going like, Terry, who's Terry? And so, it's kind of funny because, you never know what you're getting into with staff augmentation. And so I had this idea. I was going to work for Patty, and we got it, she's got a lot of training background. We can, we've seen a lot of the same train wrecks and software and all those,
Sure.
We have war stories that we can talk about, But, it was probably the best thing for me to go work for Terry, because all they knew is that they wanted to convert a bunch of training that's been instructor led forever. And their whole goal was that it was, they wanted to reduce the in-classroom time by 30%. That was what started.
That's a pretty big drop.
It's a big drop, but we were able to drop it after we got all said and done. We dropped it 55%. Wow. The classroom. Wow. There's still a classroom portion of it, but we set it up where they also have web-based training now, so they can take the web-based whenever they want. If you want to take it at 2:00 in the morning, power be it to you, because we have people that work at 2:00 in the morning. Not me, but there are people that do. And so
back in the day, you might have.
In the day, yes.
Not now.
But the really cool thing about it is people really have liked it because they can make it, because we restructured how the training's given. Instead of having that you have to go through 3 weeks of training over, so many days each week for training, you only have to commit to 1 day, and then then you got your training, your web-based beforehand, so you can do it when you want and how you want to do it, and it makes it easier for scheduling. What we have found is that we were having these people come in for training. There is one, I want to say, vice president who enrolled in one of the classes 3 times before he can complete all the sessions, because he'd sit there and get through class 1 and 2. Oh, the next week can't be there for that one because some emergency came up in the fab. And so and it's changed the way people have looked at training, and we're now looking at it going like, this is really a cool way of doing it. It's taken a different approach to it, but it's much like you would see in a college class. You do, you do this before you do that, then this, then that, and it really has made it much easier, and we're getting more people through classes that way.
And not only being able to get people through the classes, but what is the retention like for the information that they're getting from these kind of self-serve whenever you're able to jump into a training session?
I don't have any statistics on it, which is because we haven't had time enough to go back for that. But what I've heard anecdotally is that the training has really helped our employees get their job better. We have a whole process. If you're going to change something on, if you got a chip and you need to change a tool or something like that, or some chemical mixture. If you're asking me how to make a chip, I have no idea. It has something to do with Legos, all I could tell, because that's when I look at when I sit through the presentation, they talk about we build this and we build that, and it kind of reminds me of Legos. But I'm sure that that's, it's how they build them and stuff. But if you're changing something, there's a whole change process with it, and they're getting better, what they call white papers, and getting better remarks, better information around it. So that's what's the cool thing is we're seeing a change in the culture.
I mean, I would think that just the ability to do it when you can is going to allow you to just jump ahead in your own career, just jumping into it instead of having to do class after class after class. And so you could, like you said, you could take multiple hours that would have been multiple days of classes within 2 days. And a lot of that is already delivered to you based on what you need next in the line of training. Are you guys using any AI tools for this type of build out?
No, we're not. It's a lot of what we're doing now is Intel is going through a real change in the way we do business. We've got two different organizations within the group, within the company now. One is the product side, which is what everybody knows, the Pentium chips or the Ultra chips, or what, the chips themselves. And then we've got the fab side, which we're building out to be able to help with the supply chain problems that we had coming out of COVID. There was some real supply chain, and the CHIPS Act is helping us with that.
Yep.
And what that has done for us is we are using AI in the development of a lot of that information out on the fab floors, which
gotcha.
Which is neat. I just saw a demonstration of that they had a month or so ago. That was really pretty cool. I mean, I'm going like, wow. But we have our requirements on the fab side, and that's the side of the business I'm on, is the fab side or the foundry side, is we're very restricted in what we can actually use AI for. And they're putting and then part of it is because we will have different companies come in and buy, so much of a run, and they're, whether it's, I don't know the company names by any means, but it's like the Apples or AMD, that don't have their own chip company, don't have their own factories or fabs. They go out and buy it from somebody, and that's the business we're getting into. While we have to put a real, what do I call it, guardrails up to make sure that we don't let any of their information out, and then none of our information goes out to their side. So we're running this, the thing I think most companies are running is we think AI is fantastic, but we don't want to put any of our corporate data out on the intranet.
Yep.
And so that's where we're at this point, is we're building it out. I've been on a project right now is just getting people staffed up for it and getting their skill sets built for it. And so we're, as soon as we think we've got it figured out for this week, something changes. AI is changing that fast.
Yep.
And so that with
just a sidestep, were you nervous about jumping into this new industry? I mean, you did a lot of work in the financial industry. I'm sure there is some crossover, but I would imagine that there's a lot of other things that are quite different about this industry as opposed to anything with the financial
especially since
side of things.
The group I'm supporting originally was just the statistics group. And I took enough statistics in college to realize I was not going to be a statistician. I understand if you give me enough.
You and your professors knew.
If you give me enough information and I can ask questions about the data, then I can make judgment calls. But how you came up with how that line goes up or goes down. So, I am the token non-statistician in our group. But what that brings to it is I bring a whole different view to it, because, the people, Intel is very, I want to say heavy, but I'm not sure that's the right word for it, but very, part of the culture is very much around college degrees. So I would bet over half the people in the company have a graduate degree of some type. whether it's a master's or a PhD.
Yep.
Probably half of my team is doctorates. You never know it by talking to them. I mean, you listen to them and they are doctorates if you listen to them long enough, but they don't they don't get stuck on, I'm Dr. So-and-so, you know. And that's what the cool thing about Intel is, that it doesn't matter where you're coming from. We respect all your opinions. And that is the coolest thing for me coming into it.
That seems rare, especially for the tech industry.
It really is. It's very exciting to be part of it. We have a weekly video chat, not chat, but a video from the CEO, Pat, and he is just, I'd go work for him anywhere. I mean, if he was working at McDonald's and he wanted me to go fry French fries, I'm not sure I wouldn't go fry French fries for him, because of the way the respect that we get out of, you know, somebody at that level, and it's carried all the way down. And so I know, you know, I went from being a contractor to just a couple months ago to what they call a regular employee. And, you know, they were all concerned. I said, my only concern about this whole thing is that I don't want to mess up my health insurance stuff, because I was getting that as a contractor. And so there was people that were calling, making sure I was, you know, that my health insurance didn't get messed up and that I knew what I needed to do and all this kind of. I've never seen it in any other organization like that. It's just really exciting.
That's got to feel awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been doing this for years and years, and for them to really treat you as a part of the family.
Oh, yeah.
It's got to feel good.
Yeah. And they let my role expand. Where I support now, probably just a little bit over 1,100 people in just one particular organization. That's what I support from a training perspective.
Wow.
And so I'm getting involved in helping them come up with how we're doing training, you know, working with other groups. There's no way I can develop all this training, but I can at least point them in the right direction, making sure that we're getting the records kept right and all those little things that people normally just go, hey, I got this PowerPoint on whatever this process is. We got to get it out to everybody. Okay, how do you know you've got it out to everybody? And how do you know, track it and those things? And so they're giving me the opportunity to help define some of those roles that we haven't had defined within this group, because it's a relatively new group. They brought, I want to say 6 or 7 groups together about 3 years ago and said, hey, you guys kind of all do similar type things. We're going to put you in the same group. So, you know, and they really didn't have a learning person for it. So it's, you know, it's been exciting from that standpoint.
And what do you see the future of this group now that you're all combined into kind of a singular group here? Does it make it easier to develop the training, or does it make it more difficult?
I think it'll make it easier to make, you know, as you build those relationships, you know as well as I do, is you need to build relationships. Yep. And as I build the relationships across the teams, I can just about call anybody in the organization, from the vice president level of our group down to a technician, and most of them would take my call, which is unusual in a training world. You know,
yeah, definitely.
You know,
I feel like a lot of IDs who are listening to this are going to be like, I wish I could get my subject matter expert to answer my email. I understand. Much less the CEO.
I'm not saying that I get the SMEs are any different, but at least they'll respond to me once in a while. You know.
Yeah.
So that's what's really cool. You know, as you look at the industry and you look at where it's going, and, you know, whether you're a project-based and freelancing or staff augmentation, it's all about the relationships you build. You know, and that's where I think it's interesting to watch training, because we put a lot of emphasis on e-learning in the last 4, 5, 6 years. Part of that's because of COVID.
Yeah. Definitely.
But what we've missed is the interactions between people.
Yeah.
And that's the challenging piece of it. And how do you get those interactions? Well, use technology like we are here, using video conferencing. Yeah, it'd be nice. My team I support, most of my team's out in Portland, Oregon. I'm based in Kansas City. I met them once in two and a half years. That's fine, in person. But, I have a relationship with most of them that, I could call them up and say, hey, I'm going to be in Portland next week. Where do you suggest I go eat at? And they give me an answer for it.
How do you build that into the training? A lot of the personal side of things, which was in classroom training, how do you build that type of connection, or at least try to get some of that human interaction or maybe that human touch into the training that you're building that is much more focused on e-learning or, whenever folks have the time to jump on and do a training session?
I think part of that comes with doing what you can to invite interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that's, we've got a lot of great tools out there, whether you use actors for voiceover work or, AI programs, it is really incorporating that into the training, and realize that when you're doing the training that you're giving a presentation. So if you're doing an e-learning, that means it's got to stand on its own. So build some of that fun stuff into the audio pieces of it.
Yeah.
Because that's what those are the things they relate to. Relate stories to it, I can remember one time when we were putting this wafer on cutting this chip from the wafer, and it just exploded, whatever the story is. Those are the things people remember and they can relate to because they can see it happening to them. And it's all about story building when you do e-learning. Some content doesn't lend itself to that. I can remember a project I just finished in the last year, which was this how to fill out this form. And really
not a lot to work with there.
Not a lot to work with. It was, I wanted to do a lot more for it, but, I couldn't get the SME to buy off on it. And senior management didn't want it. And I go, okay, that's fine. And it's, it'll come around and we'll probably make changes. And, it doesn't, experiment as you go through it.
And just to kind of piggyback on that, how do you personally get subject matter expert or share stakeholder buy-in to kind of upping certain areas of the training?
I ask them, what do you like about training? What do you like about it? And, think of the best class you took in college or the best training class you've taken. And why do you like that?
Yeah.
And it's, I had this, it was my doctoral dissertation or my master's thesis advisor, I liked it because I had those relationships. Okay, so what can we do to do that here? And, okay, maybe we don't do it in the learning, but maybe it's in the ILT part of this is we're looking at it. We're working on a project now that there's some basic information we want to make sure they have before they get into the instructor-led. And so we want to keep it to about an hour and a half for it. And I'm working on the project right now, and there's not a lot of storytelling to it or anything like that. I said, that's fine. But remember, what are you doing on the other side of this to help drive home what they just learned? Because you're bringing all the good stuff into the instructor-led side, and how you mix that sourdough bread and make it all come together.
Yeah.
The web base is the starter. Now, how do you mix the flour and everything else to make it the good bread that we all like?
I love that. I can use this as a callback for our last episode of how I spend a lot of my time focusing on sourdough bread as a hobby. I want to go to our community for a question.
Okay.
So it's from your sister, Debbie Woldridge, CEO and founder of ttcInnovations.
This could be dangerous.
In In your dream world, with no time restrictions, no budget conflicts, how would you ensure system simulations are more engaging and go beyond that read, click, move to the next screen type of structure?
I think it's getting there already. I think it's, if you look at, the three-dimensional meta glasses or whatever they call them, the Apple Vision, I think we're just about there. That would be real. That's the coolest thing that I think technology is going to allow us to do, is be able to incorporate some of those things into tactile movements that have been just this two-dimensional on the screen. And we're seeing that in gaming. If you start looking at some of the gaming stuff, that's just a entry point for training. Now, what it takes with it, though, takes a lot of planning and making sure you're doing it for the right purpose. I always use the analogy because everybody wants to jump right into development with training. They always want to do that.
That's the fun part.
Yeah, I mean, I go, fantastic. Let's think about this. Go down to Home Depot or Lowe's and just tell them to load up a bunch of wood for your house and drop it off out here and then just go build it.
Don't even tell them what fasteners you need or anything that. Just tell them to put it in the truck.
You got it. Just, do you need the 3-inch nails or you need the 4-inch nails? I don't know. Just put some nails in there. We don't care. It's all the analysis and design that comes up front. And we have the tendency, and I'm probably as guilty as anybody of it in the industry, is to shortchange that piece of it. Because we're all working under timelines that are next to impossible to hit anyway. And so it's taking the experience that, I have over, almost 25, 30 years now, or Debbie having 25 years of experience, and looking at it and going, okay, what can we, what's worked in the past that I can do this, this, and this, and make it work. I was talking to another one of our groups here, and they're all relatively new instructional designers and here at Intel, and they go, well, how did you know that? And I go, I've been around. I've seen it, done it, got that t-shirt type of thing.
This is not my first rodeo.
That's right. And so, that's where we, but we're afraid to say that sometimes as instructional designers. And it really does is, do you want somebody that just got a bunch of wood to go build your house, or do you want some plans to go with it? I personally,
plans would be nice.
Knowing my construction skills, probably should have some plans to go with it.
IKEA is a struggle in your household. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes. We don't shop at IKEA. The instructions are too complex.
Oh, well, hilarious. You kind of mentioned a little bit of this throughout the entire conversation, but I kind of want to nail down what your thoughts are on where you see L&D for the future. So where do you see it here in 10 years? Are we really sticking with this? Yeah, no, I'm just, are we sticking with this mostly, what's the word for it? Just-in-time training, like anything that you need to pull up, you can pull up on whatever app that, has been custom built for a specific corporation, those type of things.
I would like to say that's true, but I really don't think that's the best thing for the industry or best thing for the student.
Yeah.
Or the learner is by having that just in time. There are things that, if you're working on a piece of equipment and you need to know how to replace this gizmo in it, then that works perfect. Then I can go through, I've got a step action table. Oh, okay. I see what they're saying, but here, I click here. Oh, I can get a video on how it actually works. That's perfect for those situations. But as you look at it and you look at the things like where AI is going and it's not so much how to use AI, but how to program an AI, which has really been around for 50 plus years. It's only been in like the last 3-4 years, so we've called it artificial intelligence. We've had machine learning forever.
Yep.
And so, you've got to get back to the basics. And with the basics, that's where it takes time to get people up to speed. And I know that we want to rush into things, and the timeline we get to do things shorter. We're bringing out, 5 generations of computer chips in 4 years here at Intel. And that's mega what am I call it, just a monumental task to happen. And so with that,
it's unbelievable.
I can only
your
imagine.
Industry in particular that you're working for is so quick paced that I would think a lot of it is, there's a lot of simplicity and there's a lot of great things behind having just-in-time training, but none of that gives you the true confidence as the learner or as someone jumping into this career, knowing that you actually have a true understanding of what you need to do, because especially in fabrication, things are going to go wrong. And while it's great to have that just-in-time training style to be like, oh yeah, this is how I fix this here, but how do you even know where to pinpoint that problem within this? And how do you feel like you can even confidently look at the training that is just in time to be like, yeah, I can fix this?
Well, yeah, and especially in the group that I'm part of is basically the R&D part of Intel. So how do you,
the fun side?
Yeah, it's fun side, but probably the most frustrating because they're coming.
Oh, I believe it.
They're the ones that are entrusted with Moore's law, which is,
yes,
how fast computers are growing and everything like that. So how do you keep knowing that you're doing the right decisions? Well, you've got to have that baseline knowledge. And part of that baseline knowledge is knowing the history of where you've been, but also keep your eye on what's coming down the pike. And so that's the real challenge we have from a training perspective is how do we know that we're making that right change for the future? And so that's where we have to really depend on the people that have been at Intel for 10, 15, 20. I just saw somebody was retiring with 40 years of experience here at Intel. So the company's only 50 years old, so they were here, at year 10. Their employee number's got to be like 83 or something, And so we've got to use that as, from an instructional design standpoint, is use that to understand where it's been so we can help guide the conversations from the new stuff coming in, that we guided in the right direction. Because they're going to know all those mistakes that we made from A to B, and we're up to Z now. They've got a pretty good idea of all the mistakes we made, so let's try not to make those same mistakes. And that's where training can help. And whether it's through a simulation or just-in-time training or baseline knowledge, that's the thing that we're looking at artificial intelligence training here. And do you train them on basic statistics knowledge, or do you train them on computer programming? Or is it a combination thereof? And I listen to both sides, and I think it's a combination thereof, and it's almost an equal amount, because without the statistics and knowing how data is put together, how can you be able to pull that information?
Yeah, exactly.
And so
how can you make use of that data at all?
Right. And so that's where having people like myself and Debbie and, those who've been around the industry a while can sit there and sit back and go, yeah, I see where it's going. We had this problem in the 80s and 90s with telephone service. I can see the same type of, where we're going. I mean, it's not a direct correlation, but it's something I can put my hands around. I can understand this piece, so I can help guide that conversation and pull that information out of the SMEs to be able to create training that we need, whether it's just in time or if it's baseline knowledge or advanced concepts or whatever.
And with all that in mind, before I let you go here, do you have any advice for folks that are just trying to break into the industry that might get into the staff augmentation side of things, where they may be like yourself, jumping into that deep end and just trying to find a way to stay afloat in a brand new company in that corporate mindset?
Yeah, I would say is going with the mindset that you are there to help them. You're that extra set of hands.
Yep.
I always hope that, you do staff augmentation long enough, you kind of go, I'd be neat to get a job there. And I, really didn't have that opportunity until I got to Intel, because most of the jobs were 3-year contract, end up being 3-year contracts. And it is making yourself indispensable. And that can be as little as I started out doing the staff meetings for our team. We're talking statisticians talking about different formulas or those type of things. I didn't have an idea of what they were talking about, but I helped run the meetings. What I found out is Terry, my boss, enjoyed that because I kept them on task. They're so focused on whatever the problem that they're trying to solve is. I go, guys, we got like 5 minutes and we got to be out of here, folks. And it was, it's those type of things. So, even from a staff augmentations, look for ways of being important to the client and that you can do that. And, look outside the initial job. I mean, the first 6 months I was here, I felt all I did was just this one course development. And then we got going pretty good on that. And it was a 1-year contract originally. And that started at the end of February. The middle of August, she says, I've extended your contract for a year. You'll be getting some paperwork on it. So I hadn't even been here, 8 months, 6 months, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And it's because I was willing to do those things that they may have had the expertise, but they just didn't feel comfortable doing it. And they didn't feel comfortable having somebody, question them all the time. Let me rephrase it. I questioned some of the things they did to make sure it was the right decision.
Yeah.
And so by doing that, my expertise came out into it. And when I talk to them about training, they go, okay, great. We're working on this artificial intelligence. I loosely curriculum. I call it a learning pathway more than anything. But it's, looking at stuff. And one of the levels was the true novice. I know enough to spell AI type of thing. And, and we wanted them to have a little bit of statistics knowledge. And so I go, we have access to the LinkedIn Learning. So I spent a good part of an afternoon looking at different statistics things, knowing enough about the questions I've asked over the last 2 years. I found, I want to say, an hour and a half course that gave the baseline knowledge for somebody just being brand new would need to know about statistics and data mining and those type of things. So I take that back to the group, and there wasn't even a Dave says it's good. We'll go through it just to make sure he knows what he's talking about. But, one person went through it and said it was good, and it's, those are the things that you get us from staff augmentation is you build the relationships and you build on your expertise from a learning perspective.
And having the confidence to go in and ask those tough questions, because your goal is the same as theirs. It is to find efficiencies. It is to find areas where you need to grow and to find better ways to get the learner what they need to know.
Yeah. So it's really exciting to be part of an organization. I almost see Intel, it was the one that put Silicon Valley into Silicon Valley. If you go back and look at the history, I didn't realize this until I went through some of their history. But, we're almost like we're that startup company again. We're 120,000 plus people worldwide.
Oh my gosh.
And we still got that startup feel sometimes. And that's what's cool, and being able to have it, is being able to have the ability to have the HR people, traditional HR folks, come to you and go, Dave, I want to make sure that you're getting onboarded correctly. It's all those little things. And then when you come back to them and say, hey, we need this or this, they go, great, you're the expert on it, you do it. And so that's what's cool about being staff augmentation is you build the relationships and get new friends. I get asked on a regular basis, how long you could be at Intel? And I said, well, first thing is you have to understand my wife likes to travel. So that's not cheap. So I plan on being here for a while. Oh, and by the way, she said I can't retire until I can get my full amount from Social Security, which happens to be when I'm 70. So I'm going to mess up. I'm going like,
you got time?
That's like 8 more years I'm here doing this,
Oh boy.
But I don't see me anywhere else at this point. It is too much fun. It is, if you're having fun and you're getting results and people are taking you seriously, then that's what makes it a fun job as staff augmentation.
Yeah. Well, I think that's that's what folks need to look at, especially with staff augmentation, is to make sure that you've found the right place for you, a place that you like the culture, you like the excitement from the new work that you're getting, and ultimately they enjoy your company as well as your expertise. And I think while it sounds scary to just jump into a new corporation, a new group of people, I think you can find a lot of joy in that, as well as a lot of excitement and a lot of the ability to really stretch your wings as an instructional designer. So, Dave, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Great, Doug.
Yeah, we'll have you back on. I want another snapshot of this in like 6 months just to see how things are going. Mainly because I want to know what's going on with Intel.
See if I'm still smiling.
That's right. Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us this week. Next week, we'll be doing things a little differently. We'll be showcasing an incredible webinar with our CEO, Debbie Woldridge, and our VP of Sales, Teresa Chiaputo, talking about the art and science of working with staffing providers. Remember to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast, and I'll see you next time.